This is the tutorial video for the Family of Origin project. Once again, start by putting your name and section here. This assignment is meant to help you make connections between your family growing up and the family proclamation to help you be intentional as you start and maintain your own family. As an overview of what you'll be doing, you'll write an introduction and briefly explain the demographics of your family growing up. Then you'll identify several principles, practices, and outcomes. And finally, you'll make future plans on how you can apply what you have learned. So now let's go look at the rubric. First, we have the introduction. It should have a clear thesis which includes the specific principles and practices that you've identified from the proclamation, and you'll want to actually list those principles here. This should be short, it shouldn't be any longer than 3 to 4 sentences. Second, you'll briefly describe your family demographics of your family of birth. This is not a full-blown autobiography of your childhood, but it should include details about your family. For example, my father worked while my mother was a stay-at-home mom, or my father raised us because my mother passed away when I was 3, or I was raised by my grandparents, and so forth. This is solely meant to help us understand your family situation so that we better understand where you're coming from with the rest of your paper. This should be brief, no longer than 2 paragraphs. Then the bulk of the assignment is here. Pay careful attention to the formatting in this section. We'll show you an example of this formatting at the end of the video, which should put you at ease. In this section, you'll want to have 3 sections separated by subheadings. Each of those sections will have 3 parts. First, a principle from the proclamation highlighted in blue. Second, 2 examples highlighted in yellow. And third, an analysis highlighted in red. Use paragraphs to organize these parts. The first paragraph is for the principle and is straightforward. Just state what it is in a brief sentence. This must be something your family, not just your parents, did or didn't do. You should have at least one principle that was practiced and at least one principle that was not practiced. The second and third paragraphs are for the examples. They should be brief, distinct stories or memories you have from your family of either how you lived or did not live those principles. Please put each example in its own paragraph. Finally, the fourth paragraph is for analyzing how living or not living those principles affected you and your family. The analysis paragraph should be twice as long as the first 3 paragraphs, meaning at least half of this entire family principles, practices, and outcomes section should be the analysis. You will then repeat this pattern for each of your 3 principles. The next part is for your future plans. You should spend about 2 pages explaining how you will implement each of the principles above in your family of choice. You must discuss all 3 principles to get full credit. Please divide this into 3 separate paragraphs, 1 for each principle. As you share your plans, mention things you will do differently and things you will do the same as your family of origin. Be specific in your plans and what you will do or not do to implement each principle. Finally, conclude with a conclusion. This should be very similar to your introduction and should restate each principle. It should be brief and straightforward. The only other thing you'll be graded on is basic grammar and formatting. This is not an English class, but please proofread your paper before submitting it for grammatical errors. And be sure to follow the formatting instructions in this video and on the assignment itself. Now, if you're a visual learner like me, it might help to take a field trip through an example. As you see, here is their introduction, and they list the specific principles from the proclamation that they're talking about. They also keep the introduction within 3 to 4 sentences. Next, we have their family demographics section. This is where they briefly explain their demographics from their family growing up, and they keep it within about 2 paragraphs. Next, we have their family principles, practices, and outcomes section, which is the biggest portion of this assignment. They start with a subheading with the principle, and then their first paragraph is the principle, and the second two paragraphs are the yellow examples. Remember to highlight examples in yellow and have one paragraph for each one. Then they have their red analysis. And as you can see, their analysis is more than half of the principles and examples combined. Next, we have their next principle with a subheading, blue sentence for the first paragraph, two example paragraphs highlighted in yellow, and their analysis. And they do the same thing with the last principle. Blue, yellow, yellow, red. Now we get to the future plans section. This is where they have all three principles coming back, and they make future plans for each of those. They have the first subheading for their principle of wholesome recreational activities, their second one for work, and their third one for forgiveness. And then they conclude with their conclusion, which is about 2 to 3 sentences. Congratulations, you are now ready to do your Family of Origins assignment.